All right, welcome to episode 41 of Life is Horror. This will be the PG-13 themed episode because of Lisa Frankenstein and the one of two movies I'll be reviewing today, mini reviews for Lisa Frankenstein and Destroy All Neighbors, which is not PG-13. So, but yeah, two horror comedies that I'll be reviewing that just came out in the last month. One very recently, Lisa Frankenstein, but Destroy All Neighbors I think came out in January. And they're the only two movies that came out this year that I've seen so far. I didn't see Night Swim because everyone said it was terrible. It looked terrible. It's a movie about a haunted pool, so how could that be interesting? So I skipped that. So yeah, I've only seen two movies. I've been slowing down on my movie watching, and that's why I haven't uploaded in over 3 weeks. And I've just been doing other things. I'm trying to slow down on movie watching and trying to get out and do other shit besides sit on my couch. So yeah, so those are two movies that I'll be discussing, and I will be doing a top 10 my favorite PG-13 horror movies. Because yes, I know if you've seen enough of my videos in the past, you've probably heard me bash PG-13 movies before, and say that I always prefer things to be rated R, and that's true, but that doesn't mean that I don't enjoy PG-13 horror films. There are plenty that I love. So we'll be talking about those later. So, and there was a lot more that I could have put on this list. It was hard to leave some of them out. So yeah, there was plenty of honorable mentions. Well, there's going to be plenty of honorable mentions, but there's plenty that could have made this list also. It was a kind of difficult list to make, but the ones that like the top five are like definitely top five. I'm not doing PG, so Poltergeist, Gremlins, things from like the early 80s before PG-13 was even a thing. Those movies aren't going to make the list. Just the ones that were officially PG-13. So basically anything after like 1985. So yeah, but it's mainly going to be like more modern movies for the most part. So yeah, top 10 PG-13 horror movies and Destroy All Neighbors and Megan. So two horror comedies. One that I really liked, one that I didn't care for. Which one is it? Stick around and you'll find out. So, first, let's talk about some upcoming news or some updates. Like Megan 2, 2.0, the sequel to Megan, the Killer Doll movie from January of last year. The one produced by James Wan, and it's getting pushed. Got delayed 4 whole months, so it's no longer coming out in January of 2025. It's coming out in May 16th of 2025 instead. I don't know why they pushed it, but they did. And there's an official release date for The Strangers, part one of a trilogy. That's getting a trailer dropped in the next month or so. It has a trailer coming, but it's coming out like this spring in April 1st or May 1st. It's coming out this spring. And also, Dan Trachtenberg, the director of 10 Cloverfield Lane and that Predator prequel, Prey, which I really liked, and I loved 10 Cloverfield Lane, reviewed both of those movies. He is doing another standalone Predator sequel, or maybe it'll be a prequel also, but it's called Badlands, and he is set to write and direct it. There's no plot synopsis yet because it hasn't really officially been written yet. And Rennie Harlan, director of Deep Blue Sea, is coming back to the shark genre to make another shark movie. He's already made it. Seems like there's pictures and a trailer coming soon, or maybe there already is one. It's called Deep Water, and it's not connected to Deep Blue Sea that I'm aware of, but it's starring Aaron Eckhart from The Dark Knight, all kinds of movies. Yeah, so it's got him, and it's coming out sometime this year. I didn't see a release date for it, but look out for that. I'm a fan of Deep Blue Sea. It's one of my favorite shark movies. Not a whole lot to choose from, honestly. It's a genre that is just unfortunately not that great. There's just always shitty CGI filled movies with just this that they all got the same plot. Um, which I guess you could say that about slashers, but whatever. That's just like, all right, let's go hunt the shark. It's like, how can you make that interesting without being ridiculous? And that's just what they do all the time with the shark genre, is that they try too hard to make it interesting that they make it ridiculous, like Sharknado, and then Exorcist shark, Amityville shark, clown sharks, like you name it, they made it for no money, and it's terrible. But I'm sure Deep Water will be much better than all those movies I just mentioned. But yeah, hopefully it's just as good, if not better, than Deep Blue Sea. So I'm curious to check that one out because it's also one of those movies like 47 Meters Down, another great shark movie where they're kind of like stranded, they're stuck um, underneath the water. It's like an airplane crash in the water. So yeah, just the threat of drowning plus being eaten alive. Like uh, the one I just mentioned. I'm already blanking. 47 Meters Down. So yeah, that kind of stuff is scary to me. So if it's done right, so looking forward to that. And the author of American Psycho, Bret Easton Ellis, is having he's making a directorial debut with a horror movie called Relapse, starring Joseph Quinn from Stranger Things, which I've never seen. I've never seen a single episode of Stranger Things. I'm not a TV show person. I just like to watch movies, in, out, done, not get stuck, having to binge. I don't want to just waste hours and hours watching one thing. I just like to watch movies and then get on to the next thing. So that's why I haven't watched Stranger Things. Um, but I actually own the American Psycho book. I bought it last year and I still haven't read it. Been procrastinating on that. But yeah, I love American Psycho. And so I'm definitely curious to check this out. I don't know what it's about yet, but it's just called Relapse, and it's going to be directed by the author of American Psycho. And so that's all I got to say about upcoming horror news stuff. So I guess let's jump into my movie reviews. All right, let's talk about the first movie, Destroy All Neighbors, directed by Josh Forbes. And this has a somewhat lengthy plot synopsis here. William Brown, a neurotic, self absorbed musician determined to finish his prog rock magnum opus, faces a creative roadblock in the form of a noisy and grotesque neighbor named Flad. Finally, working up the nerve to demand that Flad keep it down, William inadvertently decapitates him. But while attempting to cover up the murder, or says cover up one murder, actually. William's accidental reign of terror causes victims to pile up and become undead corpses who torment and create a more bloody detour on his road to prog rock Valhalla. I have no idea what prog rock is. I didn't know that was a real thing. I just thought this movie made it up. I'm not a big music person, obviously. I don't even know what prog is, but I literally thought it was a funny sounding name, and this is such a ridiculous movie that I thought that they were making up their own music. I'm like, this isn't real, right? But yeah, I guess it is. Prog rock. Anybody else like new to this? Anybody else not know what prog rock was? I had no idea. I don't even know how to describe it. Like what I heard in the movie, it sounded terrible, but it just sounds like a bunch of random like sound effects and shit thrown together. But yeah, it's a supernatural horror comedy, and it's got Gabe Bartalos effects. You might be familiar with that name. He's done effects works for all kinds of horror movies, and even directed one himself, Skinned Deep. Very bizarre movie from the mid 2000s that I reviewed on this channel. Very bizarre. Check it out. But he did the effects for like Basket Case 2 and 3 and a few other movies like Jason Lives. He worked on that one. And so yeah, he's a good effects artist, and I will say the effects in this movie are some of the highlights. The effects are good, and I liked the look of one of the corpses that comes back, to like the fried landlady. And Flad, he looks like the creep from Creep Show 2 a little bit more shorter and chunkier, but he's kind of got his face. I thought the comedy in this was great. I actually was chuckling quite a bit at this. I thought there was a lot of good humor, especially when he bumps into that security guard and he's trying to like get into this place, and he says something about like dueling fuck yous. Like they just go back and forth, like fuck you, no fuck you, no fuck you. Like that scene just had me cracking up, and it's short, fast paced, but there's just one like recap sequence that I felt kind of went on a little too long. This movie kind of feels 80s, which Lisa Frankenstein is set in the 80s, but this one felt almost just as 80s as that movie, but set modern day. Um, but it just kind of felt like an 80s horror film, a late 80s horror comedy. And the ending, without saying what happens, I think it could be seen one of two ways, or like I feel like you could you could see this movie as more psychological and not supernatural, but I feel like there's plenty of evidence to suggest that what he's seen, it's all actually happening. But I feel like if you wanted to, you could argue that none of this is actually happening. That, after the initial like accident and the guy, gets decapitated, that it just made our main character snap, because the whole movie is just told from his perspective. We're in his shoes the whole time. He's the main character. He's in every scene. There's not many characters in the movie. So it's all told from his point of view, and so therefore you could say that maybe he just snapped after that accident, and he's just thinking that all these people are coming back. Because I don't think anyone else sees them once they come back and they're talking the corpses. I don't think anyone else who's alive sees them. Maybe they do towards the end. I can't remember. It's been a few weeks since I watched it, but I feel like you could argue that it's all in his mind, maybe. And like it could be a happy ending, or it could be like downbeat, or I kind of thought it was a little bit of both. The ending was kind of like happy, but also a little sad in a way. Um, Augie's character, there's a twist with the Augie character. I didn't see it coming. I thought Augie was Jonah's dad. But nope. And so that's all I gotta say about this one. I don't want to go on too long. It's supposed to be a mini review, but I really enjoyed this movie. I would give it a 4 out of 5. I thought it was great. I didn't expect much from it. Kind of went in thinking it was gonna be okay at best. It just looked kind of cheesy. Sometimes movies, when they're like, supposed to be like really over the top, corny, and ridiculous, they can be too ridiculous, and I'm just like, but the comedy actually worked for me in this. Like I said, I thought it was really funny, and that helped carry me through it. And it was a short movie, like I said, just kept moving. The flat character is ridiculous, over the top. It's just ridiculous that no one else in this apartment building is complaining about the amount of noise that is coming from Flat's apartment. Just our main character seems to have a problem with it, which is ridiculous. Like everybody would have a problem. But yeah, I just really enjoyed it. So 4 out of 5. I recommend checking it out if you like horror comedies that are just ridiculous and cheesy, because this is definitely a cheesy horror comedy. Now let's talk about the next movie that just came out, called Lisa Frankenstein, from Zelda Williams, who is the daughter of Robin Williams. I read. I didn't know he even had kids, so I thought that was interesting. So yeah, Robin Williams' daughter Zelda. I believe this is her first movie. I think she's done like shorts and stuff before, but this is her first feature-length film. And so this movie is set in 1989. Starts in like the 1800s in the opening like animation, but it's set for the most part 1989. A misunderstood teenager has a high school crush who just happens to be a handsome corpse. And after a set of playfully horrific circumstances, brings him back to life. The two embark on a murderous journey to find love, happiness, and a few missing body parts along the way. So yeah, very much sounds like the movie May in a way, where she's building a friend, and this chick is also building a lover. Um, and here's my short review. Go watch May. Go watch Frankenhooker, because they're way better than this. They're way funnier than this, and they're rated R. And this movie needed to be rated R. Sorry, but this is an example of PG-13 hurting a movie. But we'll get to a list later where it didn't hurt those movies. But this movie, I just kept thinking the whole time, this should have been R. This should have been R. Especially because the humor I thought was horrible. Nothing was making me laugh in this movie. And if it was rated R, they could have got a little more raunchy, and because that I like dark humor, I like raunchy humor, and when you're PG-13, it just limits you to where you can't say fuck more than once, and not in a sexual way. So you can't say I want to fuck you, because then boom, rated R. But you can say fuck you once, and then you can keep the PG-13 rating, which is so weird. But yeah, like PG-13, that just really hurt this movie. It's another 80s gimmicky movie, and a lot of movies are doing this nowadays. I wish they would kind of stop. Everything has to be set in the 80s, and this is just another one. And it's just a gimmick. It's like we're making it a somewhat, I feel like you'd argue this is an unoriginal movie. I feel like I've seen this before, and I just listed them. May, go watch Frankenhooker. So yeah, this is unoriginal. It's just an unoriginal coming of age movie where the humor doesn't work, and that's the biggest flaw of all, is that it's a comedy first, horror movie second. Really, it's a comedy romance movie, horror movie third, because it's never trying to be scary, and it's just trying to be funny the whole time, and it's not working. None of the dialogue was working for me. Not to say that it was so poorly written dialogue. It was just like their attempts at being funny from time to time. I was just like staring at them like, was that a joke? Was I supposed to laugh at that? There's only like two other people in the theater with me, two chicks around my age, all the way in the back, and I heard them laugh once when a certain body part was chopped off and you saw the shadow of it. That was the only time there was a response from anybody in the theater. Um, but I feel like this script was rated R because you do have these characters going around collecting body parts, chopping off all kinds of certain body parts, and one of them you actually see on screen for like a second. But of course, it's like blood free, but you do see like a hand severed with an axe. And I was like, holy shit, I'm surprised that was even on screen for the 1.5 seconds that it was. Um, I feel like they wrote an R movie and then Blumhouse bought this movie, or whatever. You know, I think they just love making everything PG-13. That's just what they do. Blumhouse. They did it with Meg or Megan. That was another movie that was written to be rated R, but then Blumhouse, made it PG-13 so they can make more money, get more asses in the seats. And this is just another one of those movies where clearly it looked to me it was written to be rated R, and then Blumhouse got their hands on it and were like, nope, let's just get rid of all the blood and gore, get rid of any humor that's too rated R, and just make it a kid-friendly horror movie, and it didn't work. Uh, but I do love the look of this movie. I'll give it that. The movie looked great, and because it's set in the 80s, it's got an 80s soundtrack. There's a lot of songs that play. REO Speedwagon, and so the 80s soundtrack is nice, is one of the better parts of it, and the look of it. There's a lot of colorful cinematography, lots of blues and reds and pinks that are used. So the movie looks good, but I'm just bored. Like, especially like the first like 30 minutes or so. Like, I couldn't wait for the Frankenstein shit to start. I was like, please get to that, because I'm not enjoying anything with this main chick and her sister or stepsister and her stepmom. Like, it's the typical like evil stepmom. Ooh, like that's just another trope, and I just can't stand it. And speaking of like tropes and like overused things, there's a joke that I call like the wardrobe change montage joke that you've seen a million times, and it's never been funny ever to me. Like, it's been done so many times. Even Wonder Woman 84 just did it a couple years ago. Another movie set in the 80s, so maybe it's like a meta joke, or like it's like something that was popular in the 80s, and because this is set in the 80s, let's do an 80s joke, but it's never funny. Like, it's never funny when you get that scene where a character is getting changed and it's like a montage, there's a song playing, they keep leaving the dressing room in a different ridiculous outfit, and then they cut to the other character not saying anything, they're just reacting like, nope, next outfit, and then they get to the next outfit and it's even more absurd, and they're just like, mm-mm, and then they're like, thumbs down. Like, let's quit with this stupid montage wardrobe change joke, because it's never funny. And the whole opening credits I thought was cool. Like, it started on a good note. This movie, I was like, all right, it's starting very like stylistic. Cause I like the black and white credits that were animated, and it just kind of had like a gothic look and feel. And I was like, all right, I'm digging this. But then just quickly, like less than 10 minutes in, I was like, oh, like this is not funny. Um, and like, so they set this whole backstory with her mom getting axe murdered, and I thought that they were setting something up, but that just went nowhere. It was just so she could have an evil stepmom. That's why her mom's dead. And I was like, okay, that has to like play a bigger part in this, right? By the end. So I kept thinking like, all right, the mom who was axe murdered, maybe the main character, what's her name? Lisa Franken. Her last name's not Frankenstein. Her actual name in the movie is Lisa Swallows. And she never gets married to Frankenstein, so I don't know why it's called Lisa Frankenstein. That's not her name. Her name's Lisa Swallows, but I was like, okay, maybe Lisa killed her mom, or maybe her evil stepmom had something to do with it. And they even drop a line later in the movie where the stepsister is like, I tried calling my mom. I called her other name and her name before that and her name before that. Like she made it sound like her mom had gotten like remarried like a dozen times. So I just figured like, oh, so they're saying that she's basically been like getting people murdered and then like getting a bunch of women murdered and then marrying the guy and then at some point getting the guy killed for money or something. Like I don't know. I thought that that was setting up something, but that whole axe murder backstory went nowhere. Um, maybe that was on purpose. Maybe they were trying to mislead you. Like, oh, you thought that was gonna have a payoff? Nope. Um, and the dad in the movie, just a typical like pussy whipped character. He's just, like unaware of what's happening around him. There's a lot of characters like that in this movie that are just so unaware of what's happening right in front of them. And so it's just I didn't care, and I didn't even care about Lisa by the end. When the murders started, I was like, it's kind of hard to root for you now when you're just like being this accomplice and you're just getting these people killed and showing zero remorse. Like, yeah, your mom was kind of the bitch, but she wasn't like so much of a bitch where I felt it was justified what happened to her. I'm like, oh, like I'm supposed to like root for you now. Like, I didn't care about Lisa by the end, so that hurt the movie too. I did like the actress though. I thought she was good. I thought the actress who played her mom was good. There's some good performances here, but nothing like amazing. Catherine Newton, she's a beautiful actress. I thought she was great in this. Her wardrobe, all the outfits she wore, I thought they were pretty cool looking. And I was like, all right, the movie looks good. She looks good. The acting's all right. It's shot well, but just the humor, PG-13, pacing, I was so bored. Like, if I wasn't there with people, because I didn't go alone to see this, but if I was alone, I probably would have walked out because I was thinking about it like 20 to 30 minutes in. I was just like, oh my God, this movie needs to get going. I wanted to walk out because nothing was funny. Um, but yeah, I sound like I hate this movie. I don't hate it. It's competently made. It look like I said, it looks great. The 80s stuff, the 80s soundtrack, all that stuff. I can't say it's a bad movie, and a lot of people are loving it. Like a lot of people. I'm in the minority here. A lot of people thought this movie was so, you know, hilarious and heartwarming or whatever, but I just couldn't I couldn't relate to anyone. I didn't get attached to any of the characters. I didn't care. I feel like maybe the fact that Frankenstein can't talk and this might have hurt it. I don't know, but that's the original Frankenstein character. He never really talks really. He might say a couple words in the sequels, but I feel like maybe if he could have talked to Lisa, maybe that could have helped the movie. I don't know. But yeah, I did not a tanning bed. Yeah, in this movie, a tanning bed is what is like rejuvenating Frankenstein every time he gets in it. His skin looks better, and I thought it was funny, not in like a good way, just ridiculous that she thought like his tears every time Frankenstein cries in the movie. It's like this horrible smell immediately fills the air, and she's like about to barf. But his rotting flesh, like this, like 150-year-old corpse, doesn't stink, but his tears do. Like, what sense does that make? But the whole movie is illogical. But that was just like another. That was just one illogical part of the movie that I just was like, that's stupid. Like his tears smell, but his skin, his rotting flesh doesn't. And and it's like after the first time you put him in the tanning bed and he comes out looking a little better, why not just keep putting him right back in and just keep hitting the button over and over and over again until he fucking looks normal, like a live person? They just kept waiting until they had a new body part to put him back in the tanning bed. It's like, no, how about you just keep hitting the button again and again until he looks like a normal person? Um, but that's all I gotta say about this. Just good opening credits. They set up the Frankenstein story in the opening credits with no dialogue, just visual storytelling. And that's another thing that maybe hurt this movie because we know nothing about Frankenstein in this film other than he's from the 1800s and he liked to play piano. That's all we know. So they never fully flesh out his character or the Lisa's axe murdering mom backstory never came back into it. Like I said, so yeah, 2.5 out of 5 is the highest I can go, and that's a generous 2.5 because I was gonna give it a 2, meaning I don't like it, but I'll say this movie's fine. This movie's fine, but honestly, I don't like it. But 2.5 out of 5 is my generous rating for this movie. Was not into it, unfortunately. I wasn't expecting to love it. I just expected at least a 3 out of 5. I was like, this movie has to be somewhat funny, right? Because I read the premise. I knew it was PG-13 going in. I was like, this is going to be another like Frankenhooker, but PG-13. It's going to be another version of May. It's set in the 80s, so it's got that going. You know, I could tell from the poster and the trailer that it was going to be colorful, the cinematography, and it was. And that, it looked good. But man, I did not expect it to be this not funny. It was so miserable. The first act was miserable. So now let's get into my ranking. All right, top 10. We're starting already. It's right there. Number 10, Devil. And I'm not going to talk long about these movies. I just want to rifle through these. So I'll just say, did I rank this? This was in my top 10 of 2010. I didn't do a review for this movie. I don't believe so, but I did talk about it briefly in that video. So go check out my top 10 of 2010 video. Number 9 is Arachnophobia. I've only seen this movie once, but I obviously really enjoyed it, and I liked how like large scale it was. I thought it was just gonna be like one house infected with spiders, but it was like spiders in the whole city, and you had like John Goodman, very cool character coming in at the end, and the one actor who recently passed away. He went hiking and got lost. The warlock actor, forget his name, Julian Sands. He was in this, so good cast. It was pretty funny, and someone who doesn't like spiders. I don't have arachnophobia, but I don't like them. Um, so yeah, it's kind of freaky and it's kind of gross. You know, they just sneak up on you in the movie. They're like sneaking up, like getting into their shoes, and they're stepping into the spiders. Like that's just gross. So yeah, if you hate spiders, this is a great movie to check out. It's PG-13, and it doesn't hurt it at all. PG-13 does not hurt any movie on this list, and that's why they made the list. So The Ring remake. Um, an example of a remake that I prefer over the original, which I just watched recently for the first time. That whole Japanese franchise, there's only like 3 of them or 4. It's confusing actually because I swear there's like 4 of them, but technically 3. But whatever. If you've seen the franchise, you know what I'm talking about. That fucking like Spiral movie. It's like a sequel to Part 1, but then it's not even. It's completely ignored in Ring 2, but it came out before Ring 2. So what the fuck happened there? It's so confusing. But yeah, the remake, The American Ring, great movie. Very scary, stylized. Gore Verbinski's awesome direction. I haven't reviewed this movie, so that's why I'm actually talking about it. The look of Samara in this, the whole story, the things that they did different in this movie, very much improved on the original. Even at the end when she's coming out of TV, it just looks a lot better. The whole twist of like, why did you help her? Like she was bad, she was the bad one. Whereas like in the original, it was like the mom or the dad that was bad, and Samara was innocent, or Sadako, whatever her name was, in that version. Yeah, this one just the twist and the horse jumping off of the boat, pretty funny. Unintentional humor, but still freaky. Like if you were actually to witness something like that, you wouldn't be laughing. But when you're watching it on a movie, you just can't help but laugh at it. It's like uncomfortable laughter. You don't know how to respond, so you just laugh. But yeah, just great movie all around. These are all like every movie I've that's on this list are like an 8 out of 10, or in Letterbox 4 out of 5 or higher movies. These are all 4 out of 5 to at the top is the 5 out of 5 movies. And I'll let you know when we get there. Tremors from 1990. Yeah, I reviewed this movie. Yeah, I reviewed this whole franchise, so check out those reviews. I'll just leave it at that. And Missing. I reviewed this movie when it came out over a year ago, and if you watched my 2023 ranking best of, my last video, you'll know where this landed on that list. I won't spoil it in case you haven't watched it, but go check out that list. But this made my top 10 of 2023. One of my favorites of last year. It's a sequel to Searching, which is also PG-13, and I prefer Searching over Missing. But the reason why this is on the list is because I don't look at Searching as a horror movie. It just feels more like a mystery thriller. This movie has more horror elements to it when you get to the third act, especially the direction it goes. There's people that actually get murdered in this movie. No one gets murdered in Searching that I can remember. No, you think someone got murdered, but no. So yeah, that's why this one's the more horror sequel than. And it's not even really a sequel. It's like in the same universe. It's a standalone sequel. So yeah, that's why this one made the list. Searching did not. This one's more of a horror movie. And so number 5, Cloverfield. One of my favorite found footage movies ever. Absolutely love this movie. It's funny because I didn't like it when it first came out, but I was pretty young back then. I didn't like the style of found footage back then, but now I really like it. Like the authenticity of found footage. It just feels like you're watching real people, and therefore it's more scary, except for Blair Witch. But Cloverfield, yeah, one of the best. And did I review this? I don't think I have. But I think I did. I did a top 10 found footage ranking in the past. I might have talked about it there. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. If I did do that ranking video, which I think I did, this is what happens when you've been doing this for like over 5 years. You start to forget, like, did I review that movie or have I done that ranking yet? I think I did a found footage ranking. And if I did, Cloverfield was definitely high up on that list. It's like top 3, definitely top 5. So that's my number 5. Number 4, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Yeah, I was surprised to see that this one was PG-13 because there is a guy in the movie who gets his head punched right off. But it's a ridiculous movie, so corny. Love it. It's another movie that when I saw it, and I didn't even see the whole thing, but I remember my brother-in-law was watching it one time, and I just kind of caught the first act, and I was just like, "What is this garbage?" Yeah, I just couldn't get into it back then. But then when I actually watched the whole thing many years later, I was like, this is actually pretty funny. This is really good. I love the look of the movie, the clowns and the score, just so many great things. And I reviewed this movie back in 2019, around the time that I reviewed the It movies. So yeah, I was kind of like in a clown mode back then. I was reviewing all kinds of clown movies, and this is definitely one of the best clown movies ever made. This and Terrifier 2. These are my favorites. Number 3, The Last Exorcism. Now, this I have said in the past is my favorite found footage movie. That could change on rewatch. I haven't watched it in a few years since I reviewed it. Speaking of which, if you want to hear my full thoughts on this, go check out that review, and you can hear me talk about it more there. But sorry, excuse me. That's what happens when you've been talking for so long. You want to burp. I don't know. So Last Exorcism, yeah, number 3, one of the best found footage movies, underrated, very underrated movie. Number 2, A Quiet Place from 2018, one of my favorite movies from that year, and definitely made my ranking. I did a 2018 ranking twice on this channel, and I reviewed this movie in part 2. So go check out those reviews. That's all I'll say. Just phenomenal movie. Oh, by the way, yeah, 10 out of 10. This is the 5 out of 5 section. With Last Exorcism, Quiet Place, and 10 Cloverfield Lane. Number 1, best PG-13 horror thriller. Isolated, like stuck in a bunker the whole movie. And it's got the wonderful Mary Elizabeth Winstead from one of my favorite horror movies of all time, Final Destination 3. She's incredible. Love her. Another underrated movie. I feel like this movie kind of gets shit on because of the Cloverfield thing. Like, it's not even really a Cloverfield sequel, but it's like, who cares? When I watch this movie, I'm not thinking about Cloverfield and how this is connected. This is its own movie to me. I don't consider this like Cloverfield Part 2. Like if I ever made like a part 2's, best part 2's list, I would, even though this is a 10 out of 10 movie, this would not make that list because to me, this is not part 2. This is a standalone film. But I feel like the shit this movie gets is because of the people who want to see this as part 2, because it's got Cloverfield in the title. They're like, oh, well, clearly that ending was just tacked on. And I'm like, even if it was, it's amazing. I love everything about this movie, and I love the ending as well. It's not the best part of the movie, but it's still great. Everything in the bunker is the best part of the movie. And it's phenomenal. And I reviewed this movie also, so check out that review. I've reviewed almost every movie on this list. And the only one from the 80s was Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Everything else was 2000s on up. In fact, I think all of them were 2010 on up. Was there anything from the 2000s? Or 90s? I don't think so. We got the 80s. Okay, 2000s. There we go. Cloverfield was from the 2000s. And then, oh, the 90s. There you go. Yeah, there was one from the 90s. So yeah, I covered every decade that had PG-13 horror movies. There's two from the 90s. Damn, my memory is shit. I forgot already. All right, so yeah, there's my top 10. I'll think of a few quick honorable mentions. Movies that just missed my list were like Cat's Eye from '85. It's a good anthology Stephen King movie. And what was the other one? Damn it. See, this is what happens when you don't write them down. But yeah, Cat's Eye. That's another good one. PG-13. And Split. And a lot of M. Night Shyamalan films, actually. Like Old and The Sixth Sense. A lot of those movies are PG-13. So I would put all those honorable mentions. So there you go. Top 10. What's your favorite PG-13 horror movie? And what are your thoughts on Lisa Frankenstein? I'm sure a lot of you loved it, and I'm in the minority here, but that's all right. I'm usually in the minority anyways. But I don't do it on purpose, I promise you. I didn't expect to like either movie, and I just so happened to really like Destroy All Neighbors. But I didn't expect to hate any of them either. I was expecting a 3 out of 5 at least for Lisa Frankenstein, but it was just not for me. But yeah, what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below, and I don't know what the next video will be about or when it will come out, when I'll record it. Who the hell knows? Maybe when the new Omen movie comes out or that Abigail film, whichever comes first, that will be in the next video. So until then, adios.